Hello and welcome to another episode of the MEG Method Podcast, the podcast that helps you move, think and feel better for life. Thank you so much to all of the new listeners that have joined recently. Welcome, and a huge thank you to the people that have been here from the beginning. I'm always grateful, and I hope that this podcast can continue to be a great coaching resource for you. Many of you have enjoyed the Major Marathon podcast episodes with my friend David Yim and have since requested coverage of other marathons I've run. So in honor of this year's upcoming LA Marathon on March the 17th, 2024, this episode will focus on that race. It will include essential information for this year's event and anecdotes for when I ran the LA Marathon in 2019. LA holds a special place in my heart as it feels like my second home, having spent significant time there in my 20s, so I knew I had to run the race. I ran the race for Young Lives versus Cancer in memory of my friend Rob, and I also raised awareness for two American nonprofits that were very close to my heart, All It Takes and the Harold Robinson Foundation. This marathon marked my first ever in the USA, and it stands out as one of my most memorable races as it offered me more than just a marathon medal at the finish line. And so tune in to hear all about that in this episode. Before diving into this episode, I want to clarify that I am not affiliated with the LA Marathon or any mentioned businesses. This episode aims to provide helpful information and some personal anecdotes for those running the LA Marathon this year or considering it in the future. So let's get to it. The 39th running of the Los Angeles Marathon presented by ASICS takes place this year on Sunday the 17th, 2024. So the same day as the Rome Marathon. And this is also St. Patrick's Day, which you definitely could have guessed from this year's themed bright green race shirt and medal. I personally loved my non-Paddy's Day themed medal from 2019. It was very LA. The Stadium to the Stars course is a rolling hills road pavement point-to-point course. So it starts at the famous Dodger Baseball Stadium. You'll bypass the freeways, following the rolling surfaces past major landmarks in downtown, Hollywood, Beverly Hills, and the West Side until crossing the finish line on Santa Monica Boulevard at Avenue of the Stars. The marathon is an early one starting at 7 a.m. and the time limit is 6 hours 30 minutes to complete from when the last person crosses the start line, which I think is a very kind decision for the slower runners. This would require you to maintain a 15-minute per mile pace to make sure that you race under the finish line structure with the streets closed. Anyone slower than this, you should be aware that the course will reopen to vehicles on a rolling basis. And if you wish to continue, you must then leave the roadway and start running on the sidewalk and start assuming the role of a pedestrian and obey all of the traffic laws. If you are a medal magpie, then there is an option to take home 3 medals from the LA Marathon weekend by entering the double play. This is where you conquer 29.3 miles over 2 days by participating in the LA Big 5K on the Saturday and the Los Angeles Marathon on the Sunday. You'll then earn 3 medals, 1 from the 5K, 1 from the marathon, and this special double play challenge medal that you'll receive at the marathon finish line. And American races like their big chunky medals. The race usually hosts around 22,000 runners. The starting age for LA is a rare one, as you can be as young as 16 to enter this race, some even younger if they have entered with Students Run LA. But anyone under 18 must have their legal guardian present to pick up their race bib and sign the waiver. I actually didn't know this before running in 2019. So I was absolutely shocked during the race as I'm running along and I couldn't understand where all of these teenagers were coming from. and where their parents were. Because a lot of the races that I've done, the starting age limit has been either 18 or 20 and above. There is a general or charity race entry option, and the sign up is very easy, which I think is actually one of the huge benefits from not running a major marathon. The major marathons can cause you to lose years of your life or go bankrupt trying to get a place, which I'm definitely kidding. However, having said that, I have found that American races are often on the more pricier side. I believe I paid around $180 in 2019, and 5 years later, this year's entry is currently showing as $250 when I looked just now. Entry is open until March 13th or sellout, whichever happens first, which is super close to the race day if you want a last minute entry. So if you fancy a last minute trip to LA, you could still be in with a chance. During sign up, you'll enter your details, your predicted race time to help with the starting corral selection, and you also choose your transport option for the day of the race. Now, like New York, the start line is difficult to get to, especially in a city known for its traffic and that also needs to close the roads for the race. So it will be an early start to get to the start line on time. Just be prepared for that. You can purchase parking for the day at the stadium, but bear in mind, you've got to get back to Dodger Stadium to get your car. Alternatively, the race does offer free shuttles from 4 different locations to the start. So whichever you choose, be prepared to get up early. I was up at 3 a.m. for this race to get an Uber to Santa Monica in time for my 5:30 a.m. shuttle. So even earlier than my Ironman. But thankfully, the energy on the bus was great and they had some amazing bands playing at the start to wake you up. The LA Expo has moved since I ran in 2019. Back then, it was inside the LA Convention Center. But now the LA Marathon Lifestyle Expo is at the same place as the start line outside in the car park of the Dodgers Stadium. It's across 2 days on Friday the 15th and Saturday the 16th of March. It is free and it is open to the public. You want to enter via Lot G. You will not get sent your bib in the post. You cannot collect on race day and nobody can collect it for you. About a week before the race, you'll get an email with a QR code, which you'll need to bring to the expo along with your photo ID. And this also includes information about the expo, bib pickup and race day to help make your experience as smooth as possible. Like I said, it was a different venue for me, but the experience was stress-free when I was there. It was spacious. There was lots of stalls. You could have a free time slot to try out some compression recovery boots. We all like some freebies. There was no real queues, and I personally loved my finish shirt. I still wear it all the time now. But I am a fan of black clothes, and it was a nice black shirt back then. And they were also very kind in allowing me to swap my shirt size, as the one I got was too big, as American sizes tend to run bigger, and I didn't realize. However, of course, that can't be promised. I can't promise that will be the case on the day. And my sponsor for the race was Skechers in 2019, but it is now Asics. So let's talk about the race itself. It's an early start. As I said, I was up at 3 a.m. to get ready and then get my Uber from Playa del Rey to Santa Monica. I remember having a very odd and frustrating Uber ride as well. I had to carpool at that time so I could afford it. And we spent a very long time waiting outside a man's house who kept snoozing his alarm and never actually turned up. Thankfully, I still got to Santa Monica on time. Luckily, I like to leave things earlier than I think. And I queued up for my shuttle. And despite the queues, it was very quick and efficient. People were quite sleepy on the bus, so there was a few power naps, but it was a stress-free ride overall to Dodger Stadium. It was pretty chilly in the morning and still dark at that time, so maybe think about bringing some throwaway clothes. They'll then donate these to charity, and some people even brought a head torch. I kept getting blinded by people coming out of the portaloos in front of me. But once the race started, there's no surprise here. It was another very hot race. They follow me around. So have those clothes at the start line. And as any marathon, just keep an eye on the weather for what you should wear during the race. The Dodgers car park is massive. So everything was quite spread out, which is quite good for people who like to shake their legs out a little bit. But it did require a bit of walking from the loos to the start corral area, etc. They did try really hard to get everyone to wake up and get excited by having a real life band play. And I have to say they were excellent. They played all sorts of covers and people were loving it, especially this one lady who was full body dancing at 6 a.m. I couldn't even recreate it if I tried. She was so good. And she literally had no cares in the world. So we all aspired to have her energy, and it was a highlight of my day in the end. I absolutely loved her, and I actually got an amazing video of her in action. So if you follow me on Instagram at the Meg Method, I will have to either create a story highlight for the LA Marathon or I'll post it on my grid, because this lady had moves. It's too good not to share. LA Roadrunner pace leaders will pace the groups for the marathon from every 10 minutes from 3 hours onwards to then every 15 minutes from 5 hours to 6 hours 30. There are 5 seeded corrals. Yours would have been assigned based on your estimated time you gave during registration, and that will also be on your bib. Those corrals open up from 5 a.m. and they close from 6:40 a.m. So be ready for the race to start at 7 a.m. Now, unfortunately, in 2019, half the runners, myself included, had a bit of a stressful start to the race, as while we were making our way to the start line area, the police had found a suspicious backpack that was left unattended. Now, I'm just going to go straight in with a spoiler and say that it ended up being nothing. It was fine. Someone had just forgot their backpack. But we didn't know that for a good 20 minutes. We ended up having police helicopters circling our heads. And the police, for some unknown reason, told us not to move, but then penned us in around the suspicious backpack. So I ended up going from 20 meters away from the backpack to about 5 meters. So I generally was pooping my pants and praying to Oprah for a good 20 minutes until it was removed safely and given all clear. Thankfully, that hasn't happened since, and I'm very confident it won't happen in 2024. You'll be pleased to know. Because after that, it was a stress-free start. And from my recollection, it was probably one of the quickest start lines I've experienced apart from that, because they got us over the line very quickly. The race starts with a turn and a slight climb out of Dodger Stadium before an easier coast into downtown LA. There are 2 further significant climbs before the 5th mile. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it is a rolling course with some significant hills. So what I would say is I think it's more important to focus on your running effort than getting too tied to a specific split that you're trying to hit. Like, it's okay to slow down on the hills. And actually, if you do this effectively and you can reserve energy, you will make up that time later in the course, as it's a downtrend hill towards the end. There are some easy rolling hills through Hollywood, but there are some stretches, the main being on Sunset Boulevard around mile 12, and then again near mile 16 that are known as false flats. So this is where that area of the race seems flat, but it's actually very grueling. And I definitely experienced at this part. So it's very deceptive. It kind of creeps up out of nowhere, and you just suddenly feel it. And I was just thinking, why does this flat feel so hard? I'm only at mile 12, but it's deceptive. Mile 20, that can really bring on the fatigue, as that's a common distance anyway, where runners tend to hit the wall. You've been on your legs for a long time, those energy stores are depleting. But in addition to this, at mile 20 in the LA Marathon, you'll also experience the incline of Sepulveda Boulevard. And if I'm correct in remembering, I think mile 21 to 24 is where you'll likely experience your lowest time in the race. That's common for a lot of runners. Thankfully, after that, though, you're on a downhill trajectory, hopefully geographically and not physically. And then you can start picking up a better pace again as you head towards San Vicente Boulevard with a downhill sprint towards the finish. So for those downhills, make sure you relax that upper body, keep a good posture as gravity will be working against you, and maintain a quick cadence. So that's the more nerdy account of the course from a coach's point of view. But from my anecdotal account, it was a super hot day in 2019, but there was lots of nice wide roads. Crowds were very spread out, but they were loud when they were there, especially going through the bigger neighborhoods or past bigger landmarks like Echo Park, Rodeo Drive, and Hollywood. I also find that the Americans make excellent signage for their races. So there was lots of funny signs en route that I appreciated. There was lots of en route entertainment from bands to dancers, which was great at helping keep that energy during the race. The camaraderie between runners was good. There was charity cheer zones if you're running for an American charity. There was 19 aid stations, approximately every 1.5 miles on the course. Each station will have electrolyte, which is usually Gatorade. I don't know what the flavor is for this year yet, and water. They will have 2 aid stations with Goo energy gels at mile 12 and mile 18. The flavors for those are vanilla bean, salted watermelon, and strawberry banana. And then all aid stations have portable restrooms available. There will be 10 medical stations on course located at every 2 miles, beginning from mile 6. And additionally, free additional ones at the start, finish line, and the finish festival. Now, my race ended up being one of the most memorable runs ever. And that's because I took more than a medal away from it. So the first half of my race was pretty unremarkable. I didn't have any spectators come to watch, just some friends waiting for me at the finish line. So I was just running along quite merrily and making good time. But then at mile 20, I came across an 18-year-old who was close to collapse. I spotted him up in front of me, stumbling around, and I wasn't sure what was going on at first. So I ran past him and I looked back and he looked as white as a ghost, and I could see he wasn't really focusing. So I slowed right down and I started watching to see if anyone was noticing what I was seeing. But about 100 other runners must have run past him without stopping, right? Everyone was just eyes to the finish line, eyes on the prize. And once I'd seen him, there was absolutely no way that I could have just left in that condition. So I sprinted back and I got there just as he started to keel over, and I managed to catch him. I couldn't see a medical station nearby, so I put his arm around my shoulder and we managed to slowly walk to the side of the road, again, with no one stopping to help. But a kind family thankfully let me sit him down on their cool box, and he started crying and he was just begging, like, I just want to finish. But I tried to ask him some questions and found out he'd barely drunk, he'd barely eaten, and it was a super hot day, so not the best idea. But, he just got caught up in the race and excited, and then all of a sudden it hit him. So I made sure I got him cooled down, I got him fed, I got him watered, and I just said to him, like, we're going to chill for a while and let's just see how we're feeling. Thankfully, after eating and drinking, his colour returned almost immediately. And after about 15 minutes or so, he was desperate to run again. So the typical energy of an 18-year-old. And no matter what I said to him, he was determined to finish. So we decided to make a deal. I said that I would stay with him and we would just take the race step by step and we would cross that finish line together. So from that moment, any finish time I projected went out the window, but I honestly ended up having the most memorable race ever. And me and this kid, who is very much a man now, are still in contact 5 years later. He let me know when his band played their first live show after we discussed how he could combat his stage fright at mile 22. He sent me updates since on how he's getting on at college after we discussed for a number of miles his excitement for his next chapter. And yeah, we just taught each other so much during that race. And 5 years on, I would pick helping that kid over the finish line over any finish time, any day. We all run for different and valid reasons, but that race for me, I thought was an important reminder of how different a race could be if we paid more attention in the moment and not just to the finish line. So although I got a pretty epic medal from it, that friendship and seeing the gratitude from his mum when I returned him to her at the finish line was worth more than any medal. And as cheesy as it sounds, in my heart of hearts, I believe he was a gift from my granddad. As before the race, I'd been feeling pretty sad in the lead up to the LA Marathon. My granddad had not long passed away, and I would always go to his house when I returned from my marathons because he wanted to look at my medal. That was our thing. So I was kind of dreading the finish line a bit, as I knew this would be my first race where I didn't have my granddad to celebrate with at the other end. But then this kid appears seemingly out of nowhere, and I didn't cross the finish line after all. And it seems to me it was like my granddad was with me the whole time. So after that somewhat surprising finish to my race, I must admit the finish line was a bit of a blur. I got a medal put around my neck. I got given a standard goodie bag with some water and salty treats. And then I returned my new friend to his mum and then quickly made my way through the hustle and bustle to get to a point where my friends could pick me up. So I can't say I have a massive recount of the post-finish line, but I do believe there is a finishers festival available. And it's a great opportunity for some great post-race selfies as well. With all marathon weekends, if you want to eat at a certain place at a certain time, then I would definitely pre-book if you can, as anywhere around the finish line will be super busy around that time. But there's also lots of great bars around the Santa Monica and LA area too, if you want to celebrate into the evening. Remember, in America, they are big on tipping, so make sure you're tipping the right amount with those meals and with your drinks. And I think I either got emailed or texted my marathon finish time pretty soon after I finished as well, which I thought was a nice touch. And you can also access your finish time later on the website too. So there is my LA Marathon roundup. Certainly a marathon I'll never forget, from the dramatic events of the suspicious backpack at the start to temporarily adopting an 18-year-old boy for the last part of the course. I can't say that was on my marathon bingo card for 2019, but that is all part of the running adventure. So hopefully among those anecdotes, there was also some useful information there for anyone running the LA Marathon this year or thinking about it in the future. I hope you have the most incredible race if you are running. LA is like a second home to me. It's got some iconic tourist spots along the course, some great people, and there are those rolling hills to make for a decent racing challenge. If you have any questions or feedback, please do comment on this episode. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know if you're running, and if you have a future endurance event in mind that you would like some coaching support with, you can go to www.themegmethod.com for more details. Until next time, be kind, be curious, be well, run safe, and big love.